Well, greetings everybody. Welcome to our King's channel. If I look bad, I think I just crawled through hell, but I'm starting to feel a little better. I feel a whole lot less poisoned. I lost 2 days there. I went to bed on Sunday, woke up on Tuesday, and the blur is there between Tuesday and now. And instead of a volcano feeling like it exploded in my shoulder with the heat and the hurt and the everything, I've got an electric flow down my arm that's like 30 volts or so, it feels like. But I gotta tell you, if you come here with a Christian heart, a Christian mind, and a Christian attitude and a Christian outlook, you might want to go someplace else instead of this video, or at least go back to the first part. If you've made it through the first two parts and you still got a Christian heart and a Christian mind and a Christian attitude and a Christian outlook and all these things, it's probably just not your time. But I'm going to tell you, if you do watch this video, please watch the other two first. This is part 3. We'll pick up toward the end. I just start getting charged up here. It was over 3 hours that I spoke that I'm breaking down into segments here. And so without further ado, let's pick up just a few moments from where we left off in the last video. And here we go. All have sinned. All have fallen short. Come to the light. Come to repentance. But the day of the Father will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise. The elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. And it's not saying the works as in keeping the laws and commandments, that you're going to perish if you keep, saith the world. No, it's talking about the wages of sin. Your works, if you're eating a pepperoni pizza, you're going to be burned up with that pizza. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and righteousness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of Yahweh, because of which the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for a new heaven and new earth in which righteousness dwells. And of course, when there is a new heaven and new earth created, then everything you've done in this lifetime, you will forget. All the sins you did and all the sins the others did against you, you won't remember. Because when the new heavens and new earth are created, you'll be created into this new creature that will simply never sin. There's nothing around you that's going to cause you or anybody else to sin. You're not going to have these memories of, man, I would my mother made it. Oh, I would my daddy or my sister or my wife or my children made it. Man, why did they have to do that? With that in your mind forever? Our Father's merciful. He said he's going to wipe the tears from your eyes and the sorrows from your heart. He's going to make a new heaven and earth, which his laws and commandments dwell. And it says, therefore, brother, look forward to these things. Be diligent to be found in him in peace. And the only way you can have peace is by not breaking the 10 commandments or any of the 613 laws. You shouldn't have peace if you strike your mother, if you slap your mother in the face or your daddy in the face or beat them up thinking you're cool. That's not peace. It's breaking the laws and commandments, and you are to be without spot and blameless. And consider that the long suffering of our Father, our Messiah, is salvation, as also our beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom given to him, has written to you. And why people can't see this, it's because they haven't come fully to the light yet. Because if they did, they'd be doing what our Messiah said and not hating their brother or hating their enemy. He said not to. And if you're going to, well, you're doing things our King said not to. Where do you think it's going to leave you? And consider that the long suffering of our Messiah's salvation is also our beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom given to him, has written to you, as also in all his epistles, speaking in them these things, in which are some things hard to understand, which untaught and unstable people twist to their own destruction, as they also do the rest of the scriptures. And you know what's funny to me? There are people out there that claim they have so much information about Paul. Everything about Paul's known, down to whether he had toenail fungus or not, I mean, they know everything about Paul. But when it comes to our Messiah, our King, they don't know that you're supposed to eat butter and honey as he did. They don't know many years where our Messiah had went away, where he actually went, what he did. There's so many questions about our King. Even with Pontius Pilate, they believed that he didn't exist until they finally found a pillar just a couple years ago that had Pontius Pilate's name on it. Till then, people didn't believe he existed. A lot of them, others did, but many didn't. But everybody, that hates Paul, they know everything about Paul. They know what his neighbor said. They know how he baked bread, stole bread, whatever it was Paul did with bread. They think they know it. And yet, when it comes to concerning our King's life, so little is even known. It seems strange to me, but that's what you get when you get into these doctrines of men that come from doctrines in other places. So now we're going to get into the part about the hair, okay? This is the thing that I'm really convinced right now that our King is showing us, because there's many that have gone out there and they've had their hair soup, they've had their hair celery or whatever it is. When they put their whatever it was they put into their mouth, whether food or abomination, it got squirted out into these strands, into the strands here and everywhere else. The Play-Doh, the hair started coming out from what a person put into their bodies, their temples. And there's laws concerning that, wherein I believe everything that I'm bringing so far is a glimpse of hope and light for those that didn't get the full disclosure, yet they did the Jabber-Walkin, and they're going to suffer many things in the flesh because they've done it, but maybe not losing their salvation. It may actually make them start thinking that they should be more careful than to just follow the world into things, and make them a little bit more steadfast, standing on the foundation, the light, the laws, the commandments, the lamp to my feet, and so on. But anyway, here in Luke 17:11, this is our Messiah walking here, with his disciples and such, and it says, "Now it occurred as they went to Jerusalem that he passed through the midst of Samaria and Galilee. Then as he entered a certain village, there met him 10 men who were lepers, who stood afar off." They were all lepers. And they stood afar off, and they lifted up their voice, said, "Yahshua, Messiah, ruler, have mercy on us." So when Yahshua saw them, he said to them, "Go show yourselves to the priests." Now, very few out there read this. They can't read this. They've read it. They read it maybe 20, 100, 1,000 times. They may have read it, but they never read it. Our King saw them. He said to them, "Go show yourselves to the priests," the ones that are in the temple, the sons of Levi. Go to them. Can you understand this, my friends? And so it was that as they went, they were cleansed. They were on their way. They were doing as our King commanded them to do, was to go to the priests. And why? Well, in those days, there were certain functions that the priest, while the temple was there, were to perform. Our King didn't come to usurp that authority. Our King is now the head of the Melchizedek line, the priesthood, but Yahshua wasn't a Levite. Now these lepers wanted to be cleansed, so our King said, "Hey, you go to the priest. You want to be clean? You got this leprosy. You got your fingers falling off here, and you're gone there, and whatever. You want to be cleansed. Just go to the priest, and they'll pronounce you clean," is what our King was saying. So it was as they went, they were cleansed. And one of them, when he saw that he was healed, returned with a loud voice, glorified Yahweh, and fell down on his face at Yahshua's feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. So Yahshua answered and said, Were there not 10 cleansed? Now it shows Yahshua cleansed them because they started to go to the priest as they was commanded. But Yahshua cleansed them, but there's a process and a procedure of those days in the temple to actually, even though a leper is cleansed, in the community there, according to the laws and commandments, there are certain criteria that a leper, after being cleansed, had to perform to be allowed back in the community. Now, hopefully this makes sense to you, because we're going to get into the laws. If it doesn't, we'll get into the laws to show you. So Yahshua answered and said, were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? Were there not any found who returned to give glory to Yahweh, except this foreigner? This one that didn't truly have understanding of the laws and commandments before, but he's seen that I was here and asked to be cleansed, so I allowed him to come to the understanding and the knowledge of what he should and shouldn't do. But these other ones apparently were not foreigners. They were most likely lost sheep, but they didn't come to Yahshua and thank him after they were cleansed. And then here in verse 19 it says, and he said to him, arise, go your way, your faith has made you well. And hopefully you can see, because of this man's faith that made him well, how people are going to be healed by those calling on the name of Yahshua, or Yeshua, or Yehoshua, or even in the Jesus. They're so deceived that they're calling on the Jesus, and those that are sick and ill and afflicted. And when you're sick and ill, don't forget to keep me in your will. But they are healed because of their faith. And that's why our King's going to look at those that are healing, that are casting out demons, who will come out in any name, so that you'll believe you've got that power if you're lawless. You know, if you're lawless, they've got nothing to lose to let you think that you're triumphant over the demons and the devils. It's all part of the deception. But it's an individual's faith that they go to the elders and they should have hands laid on them. Then their sins will be forgiven. They'll be healed. If the one going to those to be healed is healed, it's because of his own belief, his own faith. Unless, of course, it's like a servant or a son or a daughter or whatever of an owner or a daddy or whatever that has asked for healing for that one. Well, that one might not have faith or whatever, but if the daddy asks and he's the ruler over that servant, well, that servant can be healed too, but it's because of the faith of the owner. And that's why our King's going to look at those and say, yeah, sure, you did cast out demons in my name. Yeah, you sure did. You healed people in my name, and you did a lot of wonders in my name, but I never knew you. Those ones you healed and everything, I might know them. They had faith in me, you know, but I didn't know you. So that's how it comes about that you can understand what our King's talking about with those that are calling on his name, casting out demons in his name, healing in his name, doing wonders and miracles in his name. And our King still says, I never knew you. The power wasn't theirs to begin with. The power comes from our King, you know. I can't heal you. Though people might say I heal, it's not true. It's the faith in their own selves they heal them. But it is by power of Holy Spirit that resides in me, by our King. It all goes back to our King. Anyway, furthering, now when he was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of Yahweh would come, he answered them and said, the kingdom of Yahweh does not come with observation. You're not going to watch it. Well, of course, he's talking about like in these days, until the kingdom actually comes, when you see it coming down from heaven and residing in the clouds, then you'll see it with observation. But for you to reach the kingdom, before it gets here, you can see it visibly on the clouds. He's saying that the kingdom is within you. Sorry, I jumped the gun. The kingdom of Yahweh does not come with observation, nor will they say, see here or see there, for indeed the kingdom of Yahweh is within you. It ain't in no damnable church or synagogue or temple. It's in you, okay? Then he said to the disciples, the days will come when you will desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you will not see it. Why? Because they're going to kill him. And then he's going to rise and go sit with the Father. He said, and they will say to you, look here or look there, do not go after them or follow them. For as lightning flashes out of one part under heaven shines to the other part under heaven, so also the Son of Man shall be in his day. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation, speaking in the days he was in, but also in this generation, that many wonderful things are going to take place, a gathering and all sorts of stuff before the kingdom does come visibly. It'll be in us. Luke 17:26, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. Now, before we get into this part here, jumping ahead, I want to point out the real point of this video, though there's a lot of things in here that may help you in your walk. But it says here, these lepers came, and he said, go show yourselves to the priests. And why did our king say that? Well, here in Leviticus, it shows in Leviticus 13:45, it says, now the leper on whom the sore is, his clothes shall be torn and his head bare, and he shall cover his mustache, okay? You got the mask or whatever, and cry, unclean, unclean. He shall be unclean all the days he has the sore. He shall be unclean. So see, these lepers had the sore. Our king said, go to the priests. They turned around, went. One came back and thanked our king because his sores went away. He could feel them healing. All the days he has a sore, he shall be unclean. He is unclean, and he shall dwell alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. I'm sure y'all heard about the stories about, the leper camps and such. Then he gets into talking about garments that have a leprous plague and what to do with them, but that has nothing to do actually with the leprosy in human beings. There's leprosy for garments, woolen garments, leather garments, things of that sort. But we're talking about the process and procedure that our king was sending these lepers here in Luke 17:14 to go show themselves to the priest, because our king healed their sores that was spoken of here in Leviticus 13:46. So let's go to Leviticus 14 now. Verse 1 says, then the Father spoke to Moshe, saying, this shall be the law of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest. See, our king didn't do away with the laws or commandments. He didn't do away with the priestly duties while the temple was still there. Where people come up with these ideas that he did, they're idiots. And they're saying nicely to what I was wanting to say. This shall be the law of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest. Our king didn't do away with the duties of the priest, as you've seen there in Luke 17. Our king healed them and told them to go to the priests. And this is why. It says, and the priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall examine him or her. And indeed, if the leprosy is healed in the leper, then the priest shall command to take for him who is to be cleansed. Now he's already healed. He has become clean. But for him to become clean, to go into the population of the people again, after the leper is healed, they must go through this process and procedure. Then the priest shall command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living and what? Clean birds? Well, why couldn't they take an eagle or a falcon or a kite or something? When our king said to go to the priests, why would they want to go ahead and bring clean birds? our king, our Messiah, allegedly cleansed everything, right? Well, let's take a look here. In Revelation 18, this is after our king laid his life down, took it up again, was raised, went to heaven, sitting on our Father's throne with our Father. Our Father sends message to our king, who's to reveal these things by a holy Malik, to Yachanan, who's on the Isle of Patmos. Now, our king's already dead, raised again in heaven, and yet he tells Yachanan this thing when all the Christians I know out there saying that the Lord cleansed all the unclean thing. Oh, it don't matter what you put in your mouth. Well, Kepha had the sheet come down from heaven. Well, if that was true, why would our king have Yachanan be told this? Revelation 18:2, it says, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils. Now, please, again, realize I'm showing you how to read these scriptures because you've probably read it 1,000 times and never saw it before. I want you to see, okay? I want you to see this. It says, and the hold of every foul spirit, and what? The cage of every what? Unclean. Well, I thought unclean was done away with. I thought everything was cleansed. But yet there's going to be unclean thing. Come on, people, wake up, please. There are unclean birds and hateful ones too. And back here in Leviticus 14:4 it says, and the priest shall command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living and clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. Now, if you take a look into other scriptures concerning like the ashes of the red heifer, these things also were brought forth for a cleansing from the defilement of a dead body, human body. If you touch a pig, one falls out, you get hit with a pork chop going down the road, someone flings one out the window and hits you. Well, you're going to be unclean until you take a shower or a bath and wash your clothes and everything. Then at that sunset, after you've done that, you become clean. But if some guy, jumps from a 40th floor of a building and hits the sidewalk and, half of them hit you in the face, well, you'd have to have the ashes of the red heifer in those days when the temple was here, and it would take 7 days to cleanse from that fella jumping out the window and splattering your Sunday best, okay? That's the law. But these same things were in the ashes of the red heifer, and now our king does that cleansing for us. The whole earth is defiled. People go to funerals, they don't cleanse or anything. They go shopping, they go to restaurants, or everything is contaminated with this death. But anyway, this leper, these 10 lepers, when they left Yahshua, had to go and have these things taken care of. Yahshua couldn't do it for them because Yahshua was not a Levite. He was not a priest of that day. Our king is now the high priest over all of us, but he wasn't the high priest in those days until after his death and his resurrection, where our Father glorified him. But anyway, the priest shall then command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living and clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet, hyssop, and the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. It has to be done this way. There's reasons for it. We may not know why, but our loving Creator does. Otherwise, he wouldn't have these laws for this to be done, and our king telling those 10 lepers to do this. As for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop, and dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. Running water again. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird loose in the open field. He who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes. Now get this. Shave off all his hair, because whatever leprosy, whatever the leprous man had eaten or whatever was being extruded through his Play-Doh extruder, the spaghetti coming out, it was all in the hair. It was found in the hair. All in the hair. Are you starting to catch on a little bit here? Why I do truly believe that the time is coming, but they're going to suffer greatly for choices they done that were done without full disclosure. Okay? And they were just following the crowd and such. Our Father wants none to perish, and neither does our King, neither do the 144,000 or the children of the earth. The wicked and evil ones out there want everyone to perish. The Bill Gates of the world and such want you to die, so you can be done away with, resulting in a number of 500 million that they can corrupt even further. It's easier to corrupt 500 million with a great big police force and such than it is to make 7 or 8 billion people, or 9 or 10, whatever it really is, billion on the earth today, to want to just walk in every one of their ways, treating them as if they was gods or whatever. But anyway, he who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shall shave off all his or her hair. Women also could get leprosy, but they're to shave off all their hair, all of it, on the back. Especially, I got a brother that, got a forest on his back. Probably take 6 razors if he ever had leprosy to get rid of it. But he who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. After that he shall come into the camp, and shall stay outside his tent 7 days. But on the 7th day he shall shave off all the hair of his head, his beard, and his eyebrows. All his hair he shall shave off. So as you see here, first he's to shave off, he or she is to shave off all their hair, wash themselves and everything else, and stay outside the tent for 10, and shall stay outside his or her tent for 7 days. Then on the 7th day, you've got, stubble. You see people that are always shaving so they could look like a woman. And then again, you got women that'll shave too, so they can appear more like a woman. Bless their hearts. But anyway, they're going to have stubble if they haven't shaved again. And men are supposed to have beards, and for a reason. They're supposed to let their hair grow as well. If it gets way too long, of course, you can cut it off like shoulder length or whatever, as Absalom did. There are some men whose hair never stops growing. And others like me that, that's it. 10, 15 years of growth right there, and I haven't had it trimmed. But then, after they've already shaved off all their hair, they stay outside their tent for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, they shall shave all the hair on their head, their eyebrows, and their body again. And why? Because they went through this ceremony, which won't need to be done, I don't believe, when we're gathered. But I do believe that there's going to be the shaving for those that have certain things in them that are also in the hair. And then after it's shaved the first time, because they have then given their entire life over to our King, so that they can become perfect by walking in the laws and commandments, realizing the sins that they had done, though ignorantly, but thinking they were fully instructed, and yet didn't have full disclosure, so that during those 7 days after the initial lopping off of the hair, so it doesn't end up in your celery and contaminate you, or your soup or stew, then 7 days later, with the stubble, gets rid of all the other toxins and the poisons, to where it too is cut off, and then whatever grows out afterwards, since they're not going to be eating unclean and abominations anymore, because they've turned their life over to our King at that time, when they get this understanding to do so, never again accepting the stupidity of the world, that then after that they'd be cleansed. And I'll show you here in a moment why it makes more sense. But on the 7th day he shall shave all the hair off his head and beard and eyebrows, and all his hair he shall shave off. And again he shall wash his clothes and wash his body in water, and he shall be clean. But then on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, 1 ewe lamb of the first year without blemish, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. Then the priest who makes him clean shall present the man who is to be made clean, and those things before the Father at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and offer it as a trespass offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before Yahweh. Then he shall kill the lamb in the place where he kills the sin offering and the burnt offering in the holy place. But anyway, read this on your own, and it'll tell you the procedure that needed to be done in the days of our king. And our king wouldn't usurp the authority of the priest. Our king didn't just say to the lepers, okay, you're healed, go and sin no more. No, he didn't. Our king, as you see, was keeping our Father's law, though many want to say he did away with it. Our king, when he healed them, Luke 17:14, so when he saw them, he said to them, go show yourselves to the priests. And so it was that as they went, they were cleansed. But they still had to become cleansed by cutting off all the hair, letting it grow back for 7 days to get rid of the final bits of impurities, to be cut off again on the 7th day. And then they had more things to be done after that to be fully consecrated, I guess you can say. And these are all part of the give or take 613 laws. Not everyone can keep them. If you're not leprous, you can't keep that part of the law. But you can keep all 10 commandments, whoever you are. So let's further here. Speaking about whether one can get salvation if they've got this taking place now or before the gathering of the saints. And think of them as captive women, okay? Beautiful captive women that are wanting to come and reside with our King, with the body of our King, in the place where they've been gathered on the wings of an eagle. Are you with me? All right. Well, here in Deuteronomy 21:10, it says, when you go out to war against your enemies, and the Father, Yahweh your Father, delivers them into your hand, and you take them captive. You just whoop their butt, man. And these ones are not the ones that have their DNA so defiled as in places where our Father commanded Moshe to go in and wipe them out completely, to destroy their jewelry, their houses, their animals and livestock. Everything that they had was to be destroyed because they had gone so wicked to the altering of their DNA. Even King David, you know, he had some men that fought with him that had faces of lions. And they could run and jump on rocks like you wouldn't believe. But there were those that were defiled by the watchers, you know. They saw the daughters of men and they slept with them and such, and came forth giants. And you'll see where our Father said to wipe them out completely was because their genetics were screwed up so bad. That's why the flood of Noah came. But anyway, these ones were not of that were warred upon, and captives were taken from it, where they took their cattle and their sheep and their oxen and everything else, their whatever they desired, they took it all for themselves. And it says, when Yahweh delivers them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and desire her, and would take her for your wife, well, what do? It says, then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall what? Shave her head and trim her nails. she shall put off the clothes of her captivity, remain in your house, and mourn her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you have no delight in her, which is a nice way to say, and if the woman turns out to be a real bitch, then you shall set her free. But you certainly shall not sell her for money. You shall not treat her brutally, because you have humbled her. And that word humbled, of course, is another word that is know or known. That you know the woman means that you humbled her, that you have had relations with the woman. But even though she is a bitch, you are to treat her nice, okay, not brutally. Send her on her way because you've humbled her. Now please get this, men and women out there that hate the thought of anybody having two wives. There is no scripture allowing for a wife to have two husbands, which is a totally different set of videos. But in short, when a man first copulates with a woman and there is an emission, once it meets the inside of the womb of that woman, there is a chemical reaction that takes place. It's all in the DNA. And it changes the woman's DNA to be at one with the man. And if another man was to lay with that woman in adultery or whatever else, it causes confusion in that woman's body or soul or mind or holy temple, and also causes a war within the emissions that will cause a woman, not 100% of the time, but a lot of times, they'll get cervical cancers, they'll get all sorts of woman diseases, some having to have their wombs removed and their productive organs removed and things of this sort, because the law says not to commit adultery. That's one of the 10 commandments. And then, of course, there's a scripture that says if a man dies and the woman's no longer under his law, it doesn't mean under the law of Yahweh. It means the guy says, hey, I want you up at 6 o'clock in the morning to cook me my breakfast. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. I want you to act this way. I want you to walk this way. Well, if the woman married him, she took on his law. And in those days, if they didn't obey, they could get whooped or had to wear a mask or something, to bring him into submission. But when the guy dies, well, the woman ain't got to get up at 6. She can get up at 7 if she wants. She's no longer under the law of the husband. And a husband in no wise should treat a wife as though she's a slave or his servant. They are at one. From the moment they consummated their wedding, their marriage, she became at one with the man. That's why our king is also saying, I'm not your owner. I want to be your brother. You're no longer the servant. You're my brother. You're going to be my friend. We're all going to be at one with the Father, and the Father's going to be at one with all of us. But anyway, the woman's to shave her head and her nails, go through these other steps. And then if she turns out, because she's beautiful, and that's why the guy wanted to marry her, and found out that, beauty isn't something that a man should really look for in the physical features of a woman, but they should be looking more at her heart and the intent that she has. But if that beautiful little critter, which I fell trapped to too, but that was a different story. And there was a voice that commanded me to marry her, just like there was a voice that commanded a prophet to marry a harlot and have children with her as well. There's things that some of us have to do. And I had no desire for a wife. I wanted no wife at all. And I wasn't gay either, I wanted no man, but I certainly didn't want to get bound to a woman. And I found out on this walk that most things that I don't want, that's what I got. But anyway, those ones were blessed, because I couldn't do this myself. It says, and it shall be, if you have no delight in her, then you shall set her free. But you certainly shall not sell her for money. You shall not treat her brutally, because you have humbled her. If a man has two wives, Yes, this is part of the give or take 613 laws, my brothers, my sisters, my friends, and countrymen. If a man has 2 wives, yes, it's allowed. Though I have to say, probably pretty dumb, you know. You can take a look at, Abraham and, King David and all these others that were blessed with more than 1 wife. There's no law against it. A woman cannot have more than 1 husband at a time. Well, I hope you enjoyed part 3 of the 666 series here. And I'm hoping that you can see that there is a little bit of hope. Though I probably left some of y'all off at the end there where you're wanting to bite my nose off or something. Or you might be sitting back looking at me like I got lobsters climbing out my ears or my nose. And that's all right. Please study. Prove all things. The laws were not done away with. Now, as far as the sacrificing of the goats and things that we had mentioned, went through the law there, those are part of the temple laws. Please keep that in mind. Our king, in the day that the temple was there, and he healed the lepers and sent them off to do those priestly duties upon those men for the cleansing of the leprosy. Our king today does that cleansing from heaven above. He takes care of all the sacrifices. You don't need to kill a pigeon or a goat or anything else. If you have leprosy, our king will cleanse you the same way he cleanses us from death without the use of the ashes of the red heifer. So with that out the way, I think I'm going to go to bed. I love y'all. Bye.